This is Southeastern 16, presented by FanDuel. I'm your host, Chris Lee, joined by Blake Lovell. Today, we are previewing Vanderbilt's game with Utah State. You can catch that 11:45 Central on the SEC Network. Utah State 3-1, Vanderbilt 4-0. FanDuel, I believe, Blake, has Vanderbilt as a 22.5-point favorite with an over-under of 59.5. My composite computer models got Vanderbilt by 23. The Commodores are rolling. They scored 70 points, the most points they have scored, I believe, since 1917. Played 4 quarterbacks last week in a revenge win over Georgia State and just look really good pretty much in every facet of the game.
Yeah, as you said, 22.5-point favorites over at FanDuel, over under 59.5. It tells you could be some points put up here. We do have an opponent that is noteworthy for, of course, the Aggies as they played the other Aggies. Texas A&M in Week 2, 44-22 was that game, but as you said, Utah State has won their other three, 28-16 over UTEP, 49-30 over Air Force, 48-7 over McNeese, and now they head east here for an early kick in Nashville. And so, yeah, I think this is, as we said with Utah State, I think when we did the Texas A&M preview in Week 2, we're like, this isn't just one of those opponents that you find on the schedule. You're a 35-point favorite or something like that. It's certainly a solid team here. And Bronco Mendenhall, we know, has had success in previous stops. Got him off to a 3-1 start here, and I think you kind of know how they're going to approach it from an offensive standpoint and just sort of the system that they're going to try to run to be successful, and I do mean try to run. And so, yeah, I think this is kind of a fascinating matchup for those reasons, knowing that it isn't just opponent I think you're going to walk out and just beat by 5 touchdowns here or anything.
Yeah, let's start with what I think is the most interesting side of the matchup. That is when Utah State has the ball. They're scoring almost 37 points a game. 428 yards of total offense. They turn it over 2.2% of snaps, 6.6 yards a play, and that's 7.1 per rushing play, which means they're actually running the ball, 6.2 per rushing play, which is terrific. Now, they have been sacked 16 times, and Vanderbilt really can get after the passer. Vanderbilt's defense is allowing just under 13 a game. It's forcing turnovers 3.5% of snaps, 4.0 yards per rushing play allowed, 4.4 per passing play. And teams are throwing 60% of the time because they're behind. I think if you're Vanderbilt, you're concerned here. There have been times the last couple of weeks where physical backs have gotten some yards after contact, and the tackling at times from Vanderbilt's defense has lacked a little bit. There's not a lot of flaws that you can spot when you see this team. Now, look, they have not played the meat of their schedule yet, but the way that they have dominated teams like Virginia Tech and South Carolina on the road, I mean, this team passes the look test. But I think your concern is Utah State has run the ball pretty well, and I've seen spots where Vanderbilt has struggled to stop that and allowed teams to sustain some scoring drives.
Well, and Utah State's got some guys who can do it. I mean, I think the combination of Bryson Barnes, dual threat quarterback, you look at his numbers, been very impressive. Coming off a game where he had 128 yards on the ground too, and a couple of touchdowns, 3 for 3 in that game against McNeese. I know it's a team they should have beaten the way they did, but when you pair that in their offensive system with Miles Davis, and you mentioned the rushing numbers for this team, I mean he's very good. And I mean, think about this, right? Like in all 4 of their games this season, he has had at least a rush of 30 or more yards in every game. And I think you're just talking about someone who has that big playability, and he's averaging 7 yards a carry right now. Can also play a bit of a role in the passing game too. But really, I think what he gives them on the ground is essential for them to have success here. And you mentioned just can they sustain drives? Yeah, they probably can, just based on I think that combination of those two guys and what they've been able to accomplish to this point. I think got a pretty good group of receivers that, again, have sort of proven they can make big plays too. It's just, can you do it against Vanderbilt? Are you going to be able to have the time to make those big plays? Or are, again, the Commodores going to get to the quarterback, which, again, they've not really had problems doing. So, yeah, that's why I said at the beginning, like, I don't think this is one if you're Vanderbilt. I know you're a 20-plus point favorite, but This is not a game you can just come out and be like, all right, we're just going to kind of do our thing, go through the motions here, because there's some capable performers on the other side that could sort of allow this Utah State team to come in and try to make this interesting. So
Yeah, their issue again has been it's been third down conversions. Utah State is converting just under 30% of those, which is not a good number. And again, that sack number, 16 allowed, that is where Vanderbilt's got to get you in third and long and force passes. If it's 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, they can probably go to the ground a little bit more. And that's your shot at victory if you're Utah State. But again, this is a really good Vanderbilt defense that is good up front with like Nick Rinaldi and Corday Sidner as I've seen in a long time.
yeah,
and deep too up front. Yeah,
I was gonna say that's probably the story of the game here, and we always say that. I think in these kind of games, it's like just the depth up front sometimes can be the difference when you're facing an opponent that you probably are projected to beat somewhat handily. And it's just it's the SEC, and we always say it when you get these kind of games, you can get some mismatches up front and all of that. And I mean, look, I think Vanderbilt, as we've said, is just look at it from what they've been able to do in some of these games and the way they've controlled how many games, like every game this season, they found a way to just completely control it at one point. And, what's their average margin of victory, Chris? You probably have the number in front of you somewhere. It's absurd, right? And that's with playing Virginia Tech and South Carolina already. So it's like, they have just been a dominant team in a lot of phases of the game. And if you flip it to the other side, right, it's the numbers kind of speak for themselves in terms of what Diego Pavi has been to this point. Just all the different, I think, contributions are getting elsewhere. And so, they have been a machine. And again, how often have we said that about Vanderbilt? Maybe to this point in the season, having two, I think, capable opponents. I know things have gone south for Virginia Tech and all that, but to go to South Carolina, win the way they did, they've been so impressive so far on both sides. But certainly, when you look at how they could win this game, it's just the Diego Pavi effect. I think plays a big role. So.
Well, and I happen to have the Georgia State game. I've just got the SEC Network on the front of me. I forgot they almost didn't score till about 9 minutes into the game last week and put up 70 on Georgia Tech or Georgia State, excuse me. They put up 70 on Georgia State, then that's really impressive. But, I think defensively for Utah State, Nick Howell's their coordinator. He was Vanderbilt's coordinator. Didn't do a very good job at it, to be honest. But, the talent was a lot less to work with than what Vanderbilt's got now. They're giving up 24.3 points a game. They force turnovers a little bit over 1.5% of the time. They give up 5.4 yards a play, but the problem is, Blake, they've been outsnapped by about 50 snaps on the season. And again, a lot of that's back to the offense and, their inability to convert third downs. Vanderbilt's offense, as you said, has been a machine. They're averaging 7.7 yards a play, 9.3 a passing play, 6.5 per rushing play. The offensive line has just been opening massive holes for them. And it's just an offense that lately has been getting what it wants.
Well, and two, we mentioned kind of having a similar opponent earlier, A&M. A&M had 554 total yards in that game. They won, as we mentioned, 44-22 in week 2, and it was 30-6 at halftime. And so, I think that's certainly something, if you're looking at it and you're like the Utah State fan and you're trying to be optimistic, that game didn't give you a lot of optimism in terms of being able to maybe stop a team that is kind of a well-oiled machine on offense. A&M rushed for 235 in that game. And, threw for 319. You look at some of the individual scores. Marcel Reed was fantastic and had some big plays too, right? Like Craver went for 72 on one and so forth. And so I think that's where if you're Vanderbilt and you're like, okay, why are we a 20-something and a half point favorite? One of the reasons clearly is just because I think they're going to put up points. And, we mentioned the over-under is almost at 60 over at FanDuel. So I think they're going to score here, and I'd be surprised if they don't. And that's where the only question you would have is like, all right, early kick, you kind of go through the motions early. Utah State comes down, scores on the first possession, something like that. All of a sudden, it changes the complexity of the game. You got the pressure on you. All of those things that we talk about, like with the psyche. But if you're just looking at it from the statistical standpoint, I think Vanderbilt can do a lot of the same things that Texas A&M did against Utah State in that game, just because the Aggies just seemingly did not have a lot of issues in terms of being able to just get yards in that matchup.
Yeah, and I'm looking at that A&M game, and I watched a lot of it, and I've forgotten a lot of things, but I'm trying to figure out how they got 22 points. But because the numbers in that game were not good for them offensively, they got 3.8 yards a snap on 66 snaps. 3.4 yards a passing play, turned it over once. I mean, it may have been one of those things where they got all the yards on 3 drives. But anyway, when you look under the hood, that game against Texas A&M probably should have been as close as the score indicated.
Yeah, I don't remember. I think Marcel Reed had an interception somewhere that may have set up Utah State in a good time. I can't remember the exact scenario that played out, but yeah, I mean, it was one, like I said, it was 30-6 at halftime, and it just A&M just sort of overwhelmed them early for a variety of reasons. And look, I mean, some of that has had to do with the fact that A&M is really good. So yeah, and like we mentioned, I mean, A&M was 19th, I think, at the time. Then Vanderbilt's ranked in the top 20. So yeah, and the 9.4 yards per pass, 5.2 yards per rush for A&M in that game. So there's your common opponent type scenario. Even though I know Vanderbilt and A&M don't play, but just in terms of your SEC opponent there.
We ready for picks, Blake?
We are going to make some picks right after we go buy some cups at our friends at GameTime Sidekicks, officially licensed stainless steel drinkware, as you know, as they are just the best of the best when it comes to all the great stuff they've got over there. Over 350 more schools as well outside of the SEC you can buy. I'm sure they got some Utah State stuff. If you want some of that, stainless steel sippy cups, tumblers, 40-ounce bottles, shaker cups, it's all there. SC16 for 20% discount to our viewers. SC16 over at GameTimeSidekicks.com. Also, our friends at ROKFORM, ROKFORM.com, the world's strongest magnetic phone case. Extreme protection, super strong magnets, rock lock, secure mounting. September, their busiest month of the year, just like us at Southeastern 16, it feels like. With a new iPhone release, SEC25, 25% off over there at ROKFORM. And HOVI Dry Goods, your new favorite hat. Look no further than the HOVI hats for high-quality headwear. A great fit, unique designs. Vanderbilt fans, they got some good-looking hats over there for you guys. So check it out. HOVI Dry Goods. Your bad beat team of the week this week was Auburn. That's the promo code, Auburn. 15% off at HOVI Dry Goods. All right, Chris, we got to make some picks for this game.
Well, look, Vanderbilt, I would be shocked if it didn't win the game. My thing has been, are they going to cover? And that's where I struggle a little bit because, I mean, it's an early kickoff and Alabama's next week, a game that everybody, like the SEC network was talking Vanderbilt, Alabama last week. So that's the SEC network. You can imagine the talk around the program. That said, and last week, they win a game by 48 points, but it was also a spot where, Clark Lee had to have the team's attention given that Georgia State had beaten him a year ago. So it feels to me like a little bit of a letdown spot, maybe, a game where they win but don't cover. And then I just look at this team and look at the stats. They're winning every game by an average of 35 points almost. Nobody's come within 24 of Vanderbilt yet. That includes 2 road games, Power 5. This team played 4 quarterbacks last week. It still scored 70 points. Yeah, I mean, I think everything points to Vanderbilt winning big here.
Something's got to give here because both teams are 4-0 against the spread this season. So something's got to give, I feel like, in this one. And we know if it stays at that half point, it is going to. There's not going to be a 4-0-1. It's going to be something's got to give for one of these teams. I'm with you. I kind of, and you know what? I think part of it, I'm going to be honest, part of it I think is just you and I, having been around Vanderbilt for a long time, we're still always probably going to look at this and be like, how can it go wrong versus look at how well it's been going. And so for that reason, I'm going to take the Commodores and feel pretty good about that number, although it's a weird number because, 22.5, it's not 21, it's not 24, it's in the middle. And so I don't love that because Vanderbilt could still control this game and win just like A&M did, right? 44-22, and it'd be 21. So the number is set there for a reason. The folks in Vegas know what they're doing. So I'm not as, intent on feeling great about it either way. But the numbers do tell us that Vanderbilt statistically has an advantage in a lot of areas here. Also worth noting, I think always a fun stat over at covers. Utah State, second quarter defense, 115th in the country. They're allowing 10 points in the second quarter. So if Vanderbilt gets off to a good start, the Commodores put up some points here early. I think they could do the same, just like A&M did. Get out to a fast start, get some points in the first half, and then maybe use your defense to kind of, methodically chip away towards the win. But I'm going to take Vanderbilt. But yeah, I don't love the number just because it's kind of one of those weird ones.
Yeah, and I'm, keep in mind too, early kickoff here. I'm trying to check the weather forecast because it's cooled off here in the Nashville area lately. I don't know if hot and humid, again, Vanderbilt's a pretty deep team. Does that favor Vanderbilt even more? Early kickoffs are kind of letdown spots, but hot and humid could play to the favor of the deeper team too if we get there.
We'll see how it goes.
We will, and we'll be here to wrap it up when it's done. So subscribe to the channel if you have not. Hit the like button if you've not done that. That helps us out. And give us a rating on our podcast platforms. That helps us too. Anyway, God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. This is Southeastern 16 presented by FanDuel.